Hiya, dummies. Today we're tackling the white whale of indecipherable cinema, David Lynch's surrealist Hollywood noir Mulholland Drive. A BBC poll named Mulholland Drive the greatest film of the 21st century, and a Sight and Sound poll named it the 8th best movie ever made. Even critics who had been dismissive of Lynch's previous work, like Roger Ebert, had to admit that Mulholland Drive is a masterpiece. But it's as confounding as it is visually stunning. When I first watched Mulholland Drive as a teenager, I didn't know what the fuck to make of it. So let's take a deeper look and see if we can make some sense of this baffling little opus.
Oh baby, I know every little star, just how sweet I think you are.
One of the most important behind-the-scenes details you need to understand Mulholland Drive is that it began life as a pilot episode for a TV show. Lynch produced the first half of the film to shop around networks as a pitch for a series. But when the networks all balked at the pilot and rejected the pitch, he came up with the second half to wrap up the story and released it as a feature. This is why the movie makes so little sense. All the storylines were originally conceived to be much larger arcs, but they had to be condensed to the vaguest hints to fit into a 2.5-hour runtime. There are plenty of non sequiturs and story threads that go nowhere and mysteries that go unexplained, but it's unclear if they're remnants of the original TV pilot or Lynch just intended it that way. Although Lynch insists that Mulholland Drive has a clear, straightforward story that's easy to follow, there's no linearity to the narrative. Plot points that happen after certain other plot points also cause things to happen before them. Adam and Camilla's engagement party happens long after Adam's divorced from his ex-wife, but it's also long before Diane hired the hitman to kill Camilla, which triggered Camilla's amnesia and friendship with Betty, which all kicked off before Adam caught his wife cheating on him. Diane kills herself long after her falling out with Camilla, but Camilla and Betty find Diane's rotting corpse in her apartment in the middle of the film. This narrative structure has been compared to a Möbius Strip. It has no beginning and no end, it just goes round and round on a loop. Another theory is that Betty and Diane and Rita and Camilla exist in parallel universes. They're the same people in slightly different circumstances, and that those universes occasionally overlap. But that seems much too complicated, even for Lynch. This isn't the MCU, not everything can be explained by the multiverse.
Okay, now I've got you where I want you. And Ken, you told me that your picture spoke for itself, but tonight Naomi Watts told me that she plays, as far as she knows, between 3 and 6 characters.
How you doing, Roger?
Naomi Watts plays 2 roles in Mulholland Drive. Dual lead roles are a recurring theme in Lynch's work. In Twin Peaks, Cheryl Lee plays Laura Palmer and her cousin Maddie Ferguson. In Lost Highway, Patricia Arquette plays Renee Madison and Alice Wakefield. In Inland Empire, Laura Dern plays Nikki Grace and Sue Blue. In all these cases, the 2 characters represent 2 sides of the same coin. In Mulholland Drive, Watts plays Betty Elms, an aspiring actress who comes to Hollywood with big dreams, and Diane Selwyn, a disillusioned, down-on-her-luck would-be star whose dreams never came true. I've always read these 2 characters as representing different sides of reality. Betty represents the aspiration she came to Hollywood with, and Diane represents the bitter disappointment she found there. Betty lives in her auntie's lavish bungalow rent-free and lands a major role on her first audition. Diane, on the other hand, is miserable. She humiliated herself publicly, shattered her dreams of stardom, and she ultimately loses her mind and kills herself. Laura Harring essentially plays 2 roles too, though not as overtly as Watts. Harring plays Camilla Rhodes, a famous movie star, but after she's hit by a car and suffers from amnesia, she adopts the name Rita as she tries to figure out who she is. Camilla has 2 separate relationships with the 2 separate halves of the Betty-Diane character. When Betty finds Camilla in her apartment, she helps her figure out her identity, but it turns out she's also a friend and lover of Diane, and also secretly the bane of Diane's existence because she achieved all of Diane's broken dreams. So we've got 2 lead characters with 2 separate identities for a grand total of 4 protagonists. I don't know if Naomi Watts' personal interpretation of these 4 characters lines up with Lynch's vision, but it sounds spot on. I thought Diane was the real character and that Betty was the person she wanted to be and had dreamed up. Rita is the damsel in distress and she's in absolute need of Betty, and Betty controls her as if she were a doll. Rita is Betty's fantasy of who she wants Camilla to be. Betty is Diane's projection of a happier life, and Rita is Diane's projection of a Camilla she doesn't have to envy. A lot of critics who have unpacked the meaning of Mulholland Drive have also warned against overanalyzing the film. For all the convoluted explanations that you could come up with, It Was All a Dream fits just as well. For all we know, everything we saw right up to Diane shooting herself was all an extension of the hallucinations and intrusive thoughts that led her to take her own life. Lynch enjoys the fact that every audience member comes away from his films with a different reading. Like Stanley Kubrick, he famously avoids explaining the intentions behind his work because he wants viewers to come up with their own meaning.
Eraserhead is my most spiritual film.
Why elaborate on that?
No.
But in the case of Mulholland Drive, he left audiences so baffled and with so many unanswered questions that he included a list of clues on the original DVD release. The list was dubbed David Lynch's 10 Clues to Unlocking This Thriller, and I'll try to break down all 10 clues and what they mean. Clue number 1. Pay particular attention in the beginning of the film. At least 2 clues are revealed before the credits. Mulholland Drive opens on images of couples dancing the jitterbug. Some of the couples are duplicated within the frame. This duplication hints at the notion of doubles and doppelgängers that the film will rely heavily on. The blurred image suggests semi-consciousness. The whole film follows a dream logic, like most of Lynch's films. This can actually be used to shrug off most of the confusion. If something doesn't make sense, it's because we're watching a dream, and dreams don't make sense.
Isn't that weird?
Well, you know, dreams are weird.
Clue number 2. Notice appearances of the red lampshade. The first time we see the red lampshade is next to a ringing telephone in the dream sequence right before we see Betty arriving at LAX, suggesting she's the one whose dream we just witnessed. The second time we see the red lampshade is towards the end of the film when the phone rings again and interrupts Diane masturbating on the couch. The reappearance of the lampshade bookends the story and suggests that Diane's journey is coming to an end. In visual language, the color red usually symbolizes blood, rage, violence, and this is right before we see Diane meeting with a hitman to put out a hit on Camilla. Clue number 3. Can you hear the title of the film that Adam Kesher is auditioning actresses for? Is it mentioned again? I have to admit, I can't make much sense of this clue, but that might be the point of it. The movie Adam is working on is said to be called The Sylvia North Story, which sounds like a glitzy biopic of a Hollywood starlet named Sylvia North, but I couldn't find any evidence of a star named Sylvia North online. There's further confusion when Diane keeps getting the director's name mixed up. Early on, it's clear that Adam is directing the movie, but Diane claims it was directed by Bob Brooker. It's possible that Bob Brooker was brought in to replace Adam after his outburst when he was told it was no longer his film, or alternatively it could just be a hint that Diane's subconscious mind is jumbling up all the details. Diane says she auditioned for the movie, but the director, who she names as Brooker, didn't think much of her, whereas Camilla seems to have impressed the director enough, be it Adam or Brooker, to land the title role. This is one of the biggest disappointments in Diane's acting career, and one of the main reasons she resents Camilla enough to have her killed. Clue number 4. An accident is a terrible event. Notice the location of the accident. This one is actually pretty simple. The film opens with a horrific car crash that saves Camilla from an assassin's bullet, but also leaves her with terrible amnesia.
I don't know who I am.
The location of the accident is Mulholland Drive, or more broadly, Hollywood. The movie is all about deconstructing the glamorous facade of the Hollywood film industry. It might seem fun and flashy to be a star in Hollywood, but it's actually a really dark place that destroys people's lives. And that's what the car crash symbolizes, the broken dreams of would-be stars that the Hollywood machine chewed up and spat out. Clue number 5. Who gives a key and why? The apartment manager Coco gives Betty a key when she first arrives at the complex, but I think the key this clue refers to is the blue key that Betty finds in Rita's purse. When Rita uses the blue key to open a blue box at the Club Silencio, she vanishes. Later, in a flashback, we see the hitman give Diane the blue key as a confirmation that Camilla is dead, so I guess the key symbolizes Camilla's life? I honestly don't know. Clue number 6. Notice the robe, the ashtray, the coffee cup. Lynch gives us these 3 totems so we can tell the difference between the flashbacks and the present day in the final act of Mulholland Drive. When Diane loses her mind and shoots herself, she's wearing the robe and holding the coffee cup. The following scene is clearly a flashback because the robe is gone, the coffee cup has been replaced by a glass, and the ashtray that was removed by Diane's neighbor is back in its original spot. This means that the suicide happened in real time. Clue number 7. What is felt, realized, and gathered at the Club Silencio? The bizarre after-hours nightclub that Betty and Rita go to, Club Silencio, is sort of the linchpin, no pun intended, that holds the movie together. The host tells us in 3 separate languages it is an illusion. It's a commentary on the Hollywood movie industry. It's all fake, it's all bullshit. When the singer collapses, the song continues because it's all pre-recorded. The show must go on, even if a couple of lives are destroyed along the way. That's what's felt. What's realized has to do with Betty's guilt and Rita's grim fate. Silencio, or silence, is a euphemism for death. Betty realizes she's at fault for what happened to Rita, and Rita realizes Betty has asked her to join her in death. As for what's gathered, it comes back to that blue box and the blue key that opens it. Rita will disappear into the blue box, and Betty/Diane will soon join her in there. Clue number 8. Did talent alone help Camilla? This is less of a clue and more of a suggestion of the film's critique of Hollywood filmmaking. No movie star ever made it on talent alone. At the very least, there's also a heavy element of luck, and in many cases there's also nepotism, family wealth giving you the freedom to forgo getting a real job while you're going out on auditions, and in the darker days of Hollywood, sexual favors. Mulholland Drive touches on this when Diane sees Camilla indulging Adam's infatuation with her to get into his good books. An actor also needs to have that indescribable it factor to make it as a star. You can study the craft of acting your whole life, but if you don't have that charisma, you'll never make it. Camilla is clearly a very talented performer, but the movie makes it obvious that her success isn't based on that talent alone. Adam didn't cast her because she was better than all the other actors who auditioned. He cast her because the cowboy and the mobsters and the studio heads all told him this is the girl. Interestingly, this is the same phrase Diane uses when she hires the hitman to kill Camilla. The same words that made Camilla's dreams come true also got her killed. Clue number 9. Note the occurrences surrounding the man behind Winkies. The man behind Winkies is one of the most iconic moments in the film, and it's a microcosm of the whole movie. This sequence blurs the line between dreams and reality. It's not clear if Patrick Fischler is awake and relaying his recurring dreams to a friend, or if he's in one of those dreams right now. The reveal of the man behind Winkies is one of the greatest jump scares in cinema history, and goes to show what a master Lynch is. He explicitly tells us what's coming, spends a really long time building up to it, ratcheting up the suspense, and it still manages to scare the hell out of you. Winkies becomes a recurring location throughout the film. It's where Betty and Rita call the police and they're served by a waitress named Diane, and it's also where Diane pays the hitman to kill Camilla, where they're served by a waitress named Betty. The revelation of the monster lurking behind the Winkies might seem like a totally irrelevant vignette, but it's actually an early hint that there's a hidden ugliness at this seemingly innocuous diner. Clue number 10. Where is Aunt Ruth? When Camilla first hides out in Aunt Ruth's bungalow, we see Ruth getting in a cab with some luggage. Betty mentions Aunt Ruth is working on a movie in Canada, but later on Diane mentions that Aunt Ruth died and left her some money. I think it has something to do with that pesky blue box. I know I'm using that to explain a lot of things, but it can't be a coincidence that Aunt Ruth is alive and well, then the blue box of death is opened and suddenly Aunt Ruth is deader than disco. As an American filmmaker who's abandoned Los Angeles for a lucrative Canadian shooting location, Aunt Ruth might represent Lynch's disillusionment with the Hollywood film industry. The golden age of Hollywood is long dead. Movie stars, grown-up stories, in-house productions, they're all relics of the past. But the dream of what it represented is still very much alive. Aunt Ruth represents Schrodinger's Hollywood. That's all the clues Lynch gave us, so if we don't understand Mulholland Drive now, I guess it's a lost cause. I think the film's ending helps to patch over some of the confusion. After Diane shoots herself, we get a dreamy montage of imagery from the movie overlaid on the starry Los Angeles skyline, before we end up back at Club Silencio looking at an empty stage. I think this ending tells us it's all a show, it's all make-believe, so it doesn't have to make perfect sense, and it certainly lives up to that promise. Although movies like Eraserhead and Blue Velvet have always made some kind of sense to me, I've wrestled with Mulholland Drive for years, so it was interesting to make this video and finally get to the bottom of it. I still don't think I fully get it, but I don't think it's a film that can be fully got. I think the unsolvable mystery will always be part of the fun. Roger Ebert summed up the allure of this movie perfectly. The less sense it makes, the more we can't stop watching it.
Man's attitude goes some ways, the way his life will be.
This doesn't make any sense!
Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you liked the video. Remember to like and subscribe and click on the little bell. And also seize the day and call your mom and be kind to yourself.